area where I think we should come together in our march toward a more perfect union has to do with giving America a raise. Right now, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. In other words, in the wealthiest country in the world, in our great republic, under that federal minimum wage, you can have somebody who works full-time, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. And at the end of the day, with a family of 3, find themselves below the federal poverty line. That's the classic definition of working poor. Why would we cement that into law? And so I think that the responsible thing to do is for us to try to figure out how we can come together and raise the minimum wage. We couldn't get a vote in the House of Representatives on H.R. 1010, this Congress, that would have raised the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour over the next year or so. Let's hit the refresh button and try to get something done next Congress. And this is not just something that Democrats embrace. This is not simply something that blue states embrace. This is not something that progressives simply embrace. If we're going to take a message from the outcome of the election earlier November, we can't pick and choose what message we want to take. How about we draw some lessons from the fact that the voters of Alaska came to the polls and overwhelmingly supported an increase in the minimum wage in that state? The voters in Arkansas came to the polls and overwhelmingly supported an increase in the minimum wage in that state. The voters of Nebraska came to the polls and overwhelmingly supported an increase in the minimum wage in that state. The voters of South Dakota came to the polls and overwhelmingly supported an increase in the minimum wage in that state. Those are 4 deeply conservative, deeply red states. America wants a raise. If we're looking for issues where we can find common ground beyond immigration reform, perhaps we can start there. And one of the reasons why I think we should start there is because if you look at what the minimum wage really means in real terms right now, we're falling behind in terms of where we once were, and also in terms of making sure that we are giving the people who are working on the minimum wage a fair shot to pursue the American dream. If you were to look at this chart that's before us, you will see that in 1968, only 17% of the people who fall or fell into the category of a low-wage worker had some college experience. But in 2012, that number has shot way up. 46% of the people falling into the category of a low-wage worker with some college experience. No wonder there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty about the future of America amongst the people we represent all across the country when you've got folks with some college experience falling into the category of a low-wage worker. And in 1968, about 48% of the people, low-wage workers, had a high school diploma or a GED. That number has shot up 2012, 79% of low-wage workers had completed college or obtained their GED. Americans are educated now than we were 45 or so plus years ago in terms of the workforce, but earning less. That's a fundamental problem that we've got to confront in this country. And raising the minimum wage is one way in which to do it. And the other thing that we should take a look at related to the minimum wage is the fact that the people who are on it, in large measure, are actually trying to support themselves on a full-time basis or support their families. You know, one of the most popular myths put forward by those who are determined to do everything possible to stop America from getting a raise, like to say, well, the people who work for the minimum wage are teenagers, or they work part-time after school, live with their parents. All they're really doing is trying to earn some extra spending money. It's a cute argument, but when you actually evaluate it using some objective, factual analysis, you see that these are simply myths designed to undermine the effort to raise the minimum wage for people who are actually struggling to support their families. Because unlike the popular mythology that's put forward that these are teenagers or after-school workers or people who are trying to get some spending change to the movies, the reality is the average age of people who are working for minimum wage numbers in America is 35 years old. 88% of the people working on a minimum wage right now are not teenagers. They're 20 years or older. More than a quarter actually have children. And 55% of these individuals, as this chart illustrates, work full-time. So let's have an evidence-based discussion about the need to increase the minimum wage that's rooted in objective factual analysis and not hysteria or mythology designed simply to evade the discussion. And the fact that the minimum wage increase has been embraced by deeply conservative voters in Arkansas and Alaska and Nebraska and South Dakota, I think provides us with a starting point to move forward and attempt to find common ground in doing something that makes sense simply for America. So I've mentioned immigration reform as a possible avenue of trying to identify common ground. I've mentioned the minimum wage. I think we also have to try to deal with the issue of our broken